Hello there. Why don't you come on in and join me for this little bit of extra stitch. It's Tuesday afternoon and I've just come back home from duties out and about with a little bit of spare time over lunchtime, and I thought I would sit down and just have a bit of a knit and a bit of a chat. Now the main reason for that is not long ago I finished the editing and the uploading for one of my main episodes, episode 8, which was entitled Summer Living and Winter Beanies. And got that all done, got it all together and duly posted it on YouTube with a sense that something might happen. Because in that video, I had taken some live footage of the Aran Pipe Band playing some traditional Scottish public domain melodies. But as my experience told me in the past, sometimes YouTube picks up those live performances as somebody else's recordings. And that's what's happened with this one. And so episode 8 is temporarily stuck in some sort of limbo land, either waiting for the supposed holders of this copyright to release it, or for the copyright claim to expire after 30 days. Now, it seems like folks in some countries, I think the UK, perhaps Australia, perhaps some European countries, have been able to see episode 8, but I think there are Americans and possibly Canadians who are not able to see it at the moment until this copyright claim releases. So there we go, poor episode 8, and what a shame. I think it was quite a good one as well. Lots of lovely things to see in it. I'll take you up to Loch Ranza, which is a nice little spot here on Aran with a nice castle, lovely little loch and a nice little church and little village nestled on the hills. I take you to a craft show that was held at the local Aran Heritage Museum, which is where I took the footage of the pipe band, which is the cause of the problems. So what's going to happen is I hope that you'll be able to see it soon enough. But I thought, well, I'm missing you. I just thought I would come along to say hello. It has been a little bit of a busy season. It's been a little while since my last main episode, episode 7, which was the one where I took you on the little holiday over to the mainland of Scotland just after Easter. So it'd be a long time since a main episode. There was a little live episode in between, which was a mixture of a little bit of Q&A and a little bit of an emphasis on the big charity Beanie Along that I'm currently organising. And as you may know by now, the main reason for the Beanie Along is that when it comes into the summertime, and it does get, warmish here, the last thing sometimes you think of wanting to do is to sit with a great big huge woolly project sitting all over you. At least I do. I get too warm, and usually I've got my fan on. It's usually somewhere, but that wouldn't be very conducive to recording. So what I've got into the habit of doing over the summer, especially when I was down south, is just cracking on and knitting some beanies over the summer. And then come the autumn, come the winter, I would usually utilise those in some way for charity. Now, what I used to do is I used to get my stock up during the summer and then have a nice little supply of beanies, and I would normally sell them during the autumn in preparation for winter, and then I would donate the cost of the sale of those to particular projects that I support either here at home or overseas. But I thought what I would do this time is, seeing as I have a whole load of new knitting friends, that's you, I would invite you to join in if you feel up to it. We all have those bits of woolly stash lying around and we're not quite sure what to do with them. And sometimes you just need an extra bit of motivation. So I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll just say, why don't you join in? Look through your stash See what you've got, see what's suitable for the project, and knit along with some beanies with me. And my friend Meg, who runs No Frills Knitting, both here on, I don't know if she's on YouTube, but she's definitely on Instagram as that. I think you can find her on Facebook as No Frills Knitting, and her little shop online and in real life down in Bristol is No Frills Knitting as well. And the pattern that I often use for my beanies is a pattern that Meg designed a few years ago, and I readily use that to the extent that I don't really need to have the pattern sitting in front of me. I can sort of knit them by heart, if you know what I mean. But Meg's a great gal, and I got in touch with her and asked, Meg, could I possibly, ask your grace and distribute your nice wee pattern for the knit along for the beanies? And she of course said, brilliant, do that, fantastic. So thanks a huge lot, Meg. So that means that if you go over to my coffee.com/Albanach knitter site, in the wee shop bit, for free, you can download the instructions for the knit along, and you can also get with that the pattern. That's the pattern for this little beanie that I'm knitting. And actually, because I'm whittering on, I've just did a purl stitch when I was supposed to be doing a knit stitch. So now I'm trying to undo that whilst talking as well. See the things you make me do. Anyway, we're back on track. I can now talk and unknit. Isn't that good? So there we are, we're back on track. Yeah, so that's the beanie knit along. And whilst it might be, but up to 30 days before poor episode 8 is released from Facebook supposed copyright, not Facebook, YouTube supposed copyright jail, I thought it would be good to come back on just to remind you about the knit along and how to get involved with that, because there's a wee section in episode 8 about that. But I thought it'd be good to have a wee chat as well. I am knitting on one of my beanies. This has been on the needles for a wee while now, and really it should be at the stage where it's no longer on the needles. It's been there a long while, but there's been lots of different things going on. And I say this is a really simple pattern, but when you come to the end of it, you get a very satisfying little beanie. I like good old Blue Peter style. Here's one I prepared earlier. Oh, it's got a little thread still. That's just inside. So it produces something like that, and you can put a what do you call those things? A pom-pom on the top like this one. And those are lovely little beanies. When you're knitting them up, someone pointed this out to me. A friend here on the island pointed this out. When you're knitting it up, it can feel quite small because the rib makes it pull in quite tight. But as you can see, it's got a fair stretch, and even this little hat fits beautifully on my big head with my little string hanging down here. So don't worry if when you're knitting up this pattern it feels quite close together. That's natural. But on the pattern, do pay attention to the suggestion that if you're going to have a turn-up, especially a sizable turn-up that's like on this one, you do want to make sure and knit the length. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to have as full a turn-up as you might want to. It's not the end of the world not to have a turn-up on this, because it does look quite nice, even turned down. I knit my wife one several years back, and it's not long enough to have a turn-up, but she used to wear it just sort of with a knit edge on her forehead, and it looked perfectly fine. So it does look okay without the extra inchage for the turn-up. But it does look nice with the turn-up. So that's that lovely little pattern. I love it. See, I've got it in my head. I think the bit for the crown is especially memorable and especially effective, and does a great job in keeping the rib motif going on all the way up the hat. So the idea with these hats is that eventually, towards the end of August, I will let you have some addresses, hopefully one that's near you. And these are mainly addresses of Salvation Army centres, Now, the addresses that I'll mainly be giving are Salvation Army centres where I know or have contacted the individual to make sure that they know that the beanies will be arriving. And that would be the preferred address to send them to, because these folks are part expecting them. However, I won't be able to give you an individual contact for every single nation wherever you happen to be in the whole wide world. So in that case, I would encourage you to look up your nearest Salvation Army centre. That'll either be a church centre, or it might be a homeless centre, or it might be some sort of project. But that would be a good place to send them if there's not somewhere in the list that I will give that is near you. And if you get to the stage where you've got your beanies done and you're looking for a little bit of advice, please do get in touch. The Salvation Army is in, 200 or so countries all around the world, but having served with them for quite a number of years, you do recognise that the Salvation Army world is very small, actually, and there's lots of connections existing all around the world. So please do, if you don't see anything near you, and it would be prohibitive to post any beanies to that particular address, do get in touch with me after I've put the addresses out, and I'll be able to help you that. So that's the big charity Beanie Along 2023. And I hope you'll support that. And I'm very sure that there'll be many people who will appreciate those beanies, or whatever you happen to call them where you are, come the autumn and winter. There are several of them will go to folks who are homeless on the streets, and some of them will go to some projects that are working with the elderly. So they'll have a variety of uses. But bear in mind when you're picking your yarn, try and pick something that has multiple applications to many different people's heads and styles and preferences and tastes. And so for that reason, I'm encouraging you to pick relatively muted and simple colours, because it'd be a shame for you to sit and do something with some outlandish yarn and then find that there was no one wanting to wear it. So I'm just thinking of you and your time and what you're contributing. So what I've got here is this big ball of it's acrylic, but it's got some, I think, about 25% wool content, and it's left over from a project that I did for myself over the last year or so, and got it left over because I had to buy more. It's always the same thing. You get to a certain stage in a project and all of a sudden you find out you need extra wool. And this particular wool only comes in that size of ball. I think it was 400 grams. But it wasn't a problem because it's often the kind of wool that I use for my beanies when I'm making them. So I knew it would always find some use, even though I think it only needed about 75 grams of the 400 grams that was needed for that particular finishing that project. So I say I'm just using suitable yarn in relatively sort of not exactly muted colour. I mean, blue is blue at the end of the day, but nothing garish. And as I say, both on the little instruction sheet and in Poor Old Episode 8, the reason I've suggested that you pick sort of natural or muted colours, or maybe even a little bit darker colours, is because sometimes folks feel a bit vulnerable, especially if they're on the streets, and they don't always want to be conspicuous. So I'm not just making this up. Actual research and people's experiences show that sometimes more muted garments are better. So just passing that on, but I am absolutely sure that whatever you have there that you feel is appropriate will just be fine. These are just guidelines. So, well, the other exciting news is that in episode 8, I did announce that I was about to start work on the Dustland sweater by Stephen West. I bought this pattern a wee while ago. I recently did the Dustland hat. I have done the Dustland, it's like a big shawl scarf thingy. It's a crescent shaped scarf. for myself. And I just love the detail and the way that Stephen has done that. It's all a pattern with knits and pearls to create a nice texture across the garments. I think he has socks as well, and maybe a cowl. I think he's got a cowl as well. But I really fancied having another go at doing something for myself. I have done a few things for myself over the past years, which I may have said before, but I'm not very good at guessing what size I am. I'm convinced that I think that I am much bigger than I actually am, although I'm not a small chap. But I think I've got in my head that I'm much bigger than I actually am, probably because I actually am a lot smaller than I used to be. I used to be a whole 5 stone heavier than what I am now. So I think in my head I'm still there. But when it comes to garments, I don't need garments that are as big anymore. So I do have my new wool, which has arrived. Bought it at Wool Warehouse, mainly because they got on advertising, and they've got a Sirdar sale at the moment. So here's what I've picked for my Dustland sweater. Now, it's not necessarily coming up very well on the screen, mainly because I've got some natural light coming from the window as well as light coming that way. But it is a very subtle sort of dark olive green. You could be forgiven for thinking it's a sort of grey colour in some places, but it is a sort of olive green. And these are 50 gram balls. It's double knitting. What we've got here, it's 50% wool and 50% acrylic. So it's got a nice woolly content. It's nice and soft. And I think the reason why I went for something like this, especially with the wool content, was so that we can get some good stitch definition for those knits and pearls. That seemed especially important. And the other reason that I got it with the acrylic is to give it that softness, because I'll be often wearing it next to skin, and sometimes I get a little bit sensitive to too much wool. But this is lovely and soft, nice and bouncy. And so I think I've got enough of what I need for this to do the Dustland sweater. So as you can see, I'm all printed off. I've been starting to study the instructions, which are very well and very clearly written. And so really looking forward to getting started to that. But as to when I'll get started with that, I really don't know. Because actually, although we're coming into summer holiday time here in the UK, and I am going to be taking some holiday away, I've also got a very busy time before that and after that. So I'm on holiday in the middle of July. One of those weeks we're going to be at a conference, I think a Christian conference, and my girls will be at the youth and children's part of that as well. So they're looking forward to that. They won't have to spend all the time with boring old mum and dad. But when I come back from that, I'm pretty much back on the Isle of Arran for one day. And then I'm heading back off again up into Murray, near that, just by the Highlands, much further north than here on the mainland, to a festival. Again, it's a Christian arts festival, and I'm going to be running some seminars there, not on knitting or anything related to that. I'm talking about my other life interest. So I'll be doing some seminars there. So I'm looking forward to that. But that's a whole week. I'll be camping and attending the rest of the festival there, as well as doing these seminars. And I'll generally be hanging around supporting the work and promoting the work of Sannox Christian Centre, which is the retreat centre on Arran that I work at half the time. So I've got that, and that will take me up to the end of July. And then the following week I'm back on the Isle of Arran, and then I'll be getting ready for our participation in the Brodick Highland Games. We have the Highland Games here on the Isle of Arran, in our main village, Brodick. And on the day, there's lots of traditional Scottish sports, tossing the caber, and also it's basically Scottish sport. Traditional sport is mainly throwing things. It's mainly chucking things, big logs and big boulders and all sorts of things. So if you can throw stuff, you're in. So that's the sort of centrepiece of the day, as well as athletics races and children's races and tug of war and all those sorts of things. There's also several pipe bands that come onto the island, usually 4 or 5. We've got 2 here on the island. We have the Isle of Arran Music School Pipe Band, which is mainly our wonderful young people from our secondary school, and they are doing absolutely fantastic. They're winning prizes and competing at higher levels and just getting great tuition and encouragement at school. And then we have our own sort of adult pipe band who are causing all the trouble over on episode 8. And they're quite a range of ages, but they are our sort of longer established pipe band here on the island. But there's usually 3 or 4 other bands that come and join those, and there's a little bit of a parade at the beginning, and then there's the games on the field, and surrounding all that there's various stalls and representations from various organisations and charities and all sorts of things. So Stanwix Christian Centre and Arran Baptist Church have joined together, conveniently for my benefit, to have a little stall there. Now we've got a special van that's coming over from the mainland, and this van is really sort of kitted out as a little, almost like a little quiet meditation stroke prayer space with some things inside to prompt stillness and reflection and that sort of thing. So we've got that van coming over, and folks will be able to sit in there and have a few moments for themselves. But we're also planning to do some kids' crafts activities, so I'm looking forward to that. And my idea is that I'm going to cut out some shapes that look like a kilt, in the shape of a kilt, with a little belt buckle drawn onto it. And then the children hopefully will come along, sit themselves down for 2 minutes on a busy day, and design themselves a wee tartan. And then we can stick the wee kilt design on a stick, and then they can have a little tartan thing to wave. So that's the idea. Keeping it simple, just a way to give the families something to do. Sometimes these days can be a bit expensive. You've got a lot of charities there that are looking to raise money, and very worthily so. But that means it can get a little bit expensive for families for a day out. So we're planning to just do something that they can come, spend a few moments, either in the wee van or sitting out front doing some tartan design on their wee cut-out kilt. So that's our plan. Very simple, but the main aim is just to be there, to be at the party, to be at the celebration, and to enjoy being part of the community. You do, forgive me the comment, but you do get some very miserable religious people, But, when I look into the New Testament, I see that Jesus, although he was busy, he was always at the party. He was always at dinner, and he always had time for a good wedding. So I think if Jesus was walking about in the 21st century on the Isle of Arran, he'd be at the Brodick Highland Games too. Whether he'd be chucking stuff, I don't know. There's a thought. He was quite good at throwing tables in the temple, but there we are. Never mind. So that's the plan. And then after the Highland Games, the week after that, I have some events happening up at Stanwix. So we have some open days up at Stanwix. We put on all sorts of things. Again, quiet spaces, massage, storytelling, creative stuff, arts, and all sorts of things that people can do. And of course, tea and coffee and ice cream, and just a chance to come and look around the buildings. We've renovated the buildings up at Stanwix Christian Centre, and many of the people from the community wouldn't have been in since they remember the old place as it was. It's significantly different from then. So we often get some locals coming along just to have a look-see, to see what we've done with it, and that's wonderful as well. So that's that. But then the weekend following the Highland Games, we have what is called Aaron Open Studios. Aaron has a proliferation of very talented artists, down to from everyone who's sort of just doing some art in their spare time, in their retirement, in their back room, down to some pretty serious artists whose work sells for significant amounts of money. And so there's a weekend, usually I think it's the second weekend in August, where everyone opens up their studios and people come over to the island for that weekend, and they've got the opportunity to go and visit all these wonderful artists' studios and have a look at the work and do a bit of buying, a bit of chat with the artists, and just generally have a fantastic time. So Sannox, we normally open for that weekend, and what we do is a mixture of things. We have some artists who are associated with us at Sannox, and they come and they bring their art, and so the little church space that we have becomes like an exhibition space, which is lovely. It really lends itself to that. But also we have some folks come and do some workshops. So this year we have a lady who's coming to do some junk modelling, so using recyclable goods, etc., to make some lovely pieces of art. Some of her work is exquisite, and so she's coming to do a little workshop on that. We have another lady who's coming to do some workshops based around, I think it's glass painting. I think that's right. So painting on glass. And then yours truly is going to be doing some, I'm not quite decided exactly what I'm going to do in the sessions themselves, but I've got this idea either to do a very basic come and learn how to knit, all the basics, and you know, and see if there's anyone interested in that. But I've also got an idea that perhaps I could do a little bit of a colour work demonstration. You know, if people are struggling to get into the technique of that, I can give them a little bit of a taster. These are only very short sort of seminars, like a morning or an afternoon, but I'm hoping they may be of interest as well, as long as well as the other artists who will be there doing their stuff. So that's the Aaron Open Studios, and then after that, a few quiet weeks, and then it's first or second weekend September, the 8th to the 10th. That's, yeah. We have the Sannox Stitches, and I'm absolutely delighted. All our accommodation is booked up for Sannox Stitches, and so we're out of beds and out of rooms, unfortunately. However, it's still possible for folks to come. The only thing is you'll have to find alternative accommodation on the island, which isn't impossible. But it's sort of getting towards the time of the year where it's not so busy on Arran into September. So you may be able to find something that is reasonable and not too far from where we are. If that is you and you are still thinking about coming along in September and you're wondering about where to book in terms of accommodation, do give me a shout and I can give you some advice of some local places which we know we can recommend and that we trust, and we know you'll have a good experience there. And then you'd be available to join us for the main part of the programme. As I've said before, the retreat has got some spiritual content in it, in that there's 3 times a day where we'll get together and there'll be a very simple opportunity for prayer and silence and reflection. But otherwise, it's just enjoying each other's company, enjoying the knitting, and I would emphasise that everything is voluntary. You don't have to do everything, so we don't want to create a situation where you feel pressure to do something you don't want to do. It's just enough to come along and participate in the conversation, in the knitting, and we'll have some sort of joint project that we can do together. We had a great time back in April, and it was a real joy to meet the ladies who came on that, and I think they had a good time as well. Made some nice connections, some nice friendships, and nice to meet some of you in the flesh. So that was lovely. So again, looking to do that in September. The plan is that we will have another 2 Sannox Stitches events coming up in 2024. And what I'll do is I will try and get the dates for those prepared as soon as possible, so that if you're planning on coming, you can get yourself organised. I'm happy to report that we've had a much better time recently on the island with our ferries. We had a little bit of a challenge over the winter in that our main ferry went in for repair and then took much longer to repair than it should have done. And then we had a wee boat working very hard but not quite so big and all sorts of things. Then they sent in a sort of second ferry to support things. Then that broke down and then that was off and it was challenging for a while. Then the main ferry come back, but the wee boat that was going to come alongside it wasn't working, so we ended up having to borrow a ferry from the Orkney Islands. Sorry to all you Arcadians who are not very happy that we've got your ferry, but the MV Alfred is doing a fantastic job and has been now for several months and is due to be with us well into the end of July, and then hopefully by the end of the year we get our brand new ferry coming along, which hopefully will be a brilliant addition and the solving of some of our transport problems. So if you're thinking of coming in September, you're all right. If you're thinking about coming next year, you should definitely be all right in terms of getting here. It's not hard to get here, really. We're fairly accessible, although we're on an island. The place that we connect to is fairly central on the mainland, so you're close to Glasgow Airport, Prestwick Airport, and even Edinburgh Airport are all within an hour and a half's journey to Ardrossan, where you get the ferry. So we're getting easier to come to. And the only thing you have to bear in mind is sometimes the weather is not the most predictable. But I'll tell you this, it's not the end of the world to have to stay an extra night on Arran if the weather's not very nice. It's a beautiful place to be. So that's what's coming up for me over the summer, and hopefully through all that I'll be keeping on knitting my beanies, and I'll hopefully get a good number done myself, so that we can get them sent off. I think I announced somewhere, maybe on episode 8, or maybe even on my last little live video where I was announcing the beanie along, that I've recently been accepted onto a doctoral programme, and very excited about that. It's a professional doctorate, so it's specifically related to my work and my practice, and it's designed to help me, as well as just do the stuff that I do, to reflect on it and see the ways in which I can improve, notice some of the things that I come across, reflect upon them, write on them, seek to carry out some sort of project which deals with a challenge or an opportunity, and then at the end of it, write it all up in a big paper and hopefully present that as something useful to the rest of the folks that are in my profession and who are seeking to do some of the things that I'm trying to do. So that is very exciting. I'm really looking forward to getting into that. In fact, I'm already doing lots of reading, sitting in on various seminars. Thankfully, the course, much of the course content and seminars are all available to me online. It's in partnership with a leadership organisation here in the UK and around the world, but in partnership with a theological seminary in the United States, based in Sioux Falls. Don't ask me where Sioux Falls is, but it's linked to a seminary there who make this programme possible. So very, very glad to have the opportunity and the privilege to do it, and enjoying the study and looking forward to what I'll learn about myself, about my work, and various things through it. So that's not taking up too much time at the moment. The average time that I might spend to expect to spend on that is about maybe 15 to 20 hours a week. So it's not small, but it's doable, because I definitely have some spare time where that is all possible, especially in some evenings and sometimes a bit of the weekends and all that sort of thing. Of course, as well as all that, it's trying to keep the balance of normal life and, going to the parties and all that sort of thing, and family, friends, as well as work. I better do some work as well. So yeah, really looking forward to that. I've always had a sense that I wanted to do something like that in terms of that kind of study, because I don't know, I'm one of the very, very few folks in my entire family who's ever done any kind of further education, further study, and seeing as I sort of take to it like a water off a duck's back, I think it's only right that I should apply myself to learning a little bit more when I can, when I know that I can, and when I know it's in my grasp. And so I'm just trying to be steward of my old brain while it still works, because I'm over the hill of 40 now, I'm over that hill, and you do start to notice that you can't do the things that you did in the same sort of way as you did when in your teens and your 20s and even your 30s. I'm starting to really appreciate that youth really is wasted on the young. All the things that I used to be able to, do and remember and have capacity for even 20 years ago, I've got great sympathies for those of you who are just a couple of years older than me. So what I'm trying to do is just be a good steward of my old brain and my time and, my commitments, and do that study. So really enjoying that. I'm hoping it won't affect my podcast making, or indeed my knitting. In fact, there was somebody on Instagram when I said that I had been accepted on the programme, said you'll find that your knitting is a very valuable escape, and I actually believe that will be the case. Because already I find that when my head is full of busy, and I'm just sort of sitting around trying to rest, sometimes picking up the needles is just the kind of thing you need, just to take the mind off it. You get into the rhythm of the stitches, you're settled in your chair, you're enjoying a little bit of peace and quiet, and just having a little bit of time to unwind and hopefully not make too many mistakes. So this was just a little sit and knit and chat and all that sort of stuff to give you an update on what's happening to poor old episode 8. It'll be there eventually. Just a little bit update on the beanie along, a little bit of update on my sweater, which is coming along soon. I'm showing you the progress of my growing beanie that's here. And what I haven't shown you, which I do show you on episode 8, is my Swiss Army scarf, which is a big triangular thing. It's just coming along. I'm not going to unravel it all now for you to see, but you can see that it's getting there. Haven't been doing a lot on that, mainly because I'm finding that because it's black yarn, I really need to be doing it when there's good light, because I've been having problems with my glasses as well. I recently got a new pair of what we call varifocals. We may call them progressive lenses, and I was finding the first few days really difficult to be able to see anything through them at all. But then I started to notice that the frames that they're exactly the same as these. These are my old glasses. The frames are exactly the same as these, but these have flexible, bendy legs for a purpose, because I'm a bit useless with glasses. And what I noticed was that when I just tipped the lenses forward slightly with my varifocals, they came into perfect definition. So I think what I need to do is go back to the opticians and have them fix the frames of the glasses, and then I think we'll be there. What I'm really appreciating about the progressive lenses is the clarity at sort of reading stage, and of course at knitting stage. I can see my knitting. And I got to there because when I was knitting on that black thing, I was finding it very difficult to see the stitches. A, because it's black, and B, because my close sight had deteriorated somewhat. So I'm hoping that that's all going to be sorted. And to the extent that when I was doing this, as you can see, I've got a little bit of a design feature in there, which I show you in episode 8. I was at my mum's, the light wasn't great, I was peering through glasses that weren't really working, and so I made a wee mistake, but didn't notice it until way after the time when I was able to fix it. So, design feature. So there we go. If you actually ever get back to watching episode 8 when it appears after its copyright shenanigans, you may find that after listening to me, now that you've probably heard most of it, but hopefully you'll still watch, because there's the opportunity to see the pipe band. I show you around Lochranza, which is a beautiful little community here in Arran. What else do? We go to a little craft fair, and you get to see some wonderful traditional musicians and see some of our spectacular summer weather. So I'm hoping that you'll still watch episode 8 when it becomes available in your country. And just to say, apologies for that, not to worry, worse things happen at sea, and it will be available soon enough. So, thank you so much for sitting and knitting with me for a wee bit. I've enjoyed your company, I've enjoyed chatting to you, and I hope that wherever you're knitting at the moment, it gives you a little bit of a joy, a little bit of peace, and a little bit of quiet time, bit of focus, time to let down your hair or de-stress or whatever your knitting or your crochet or your crafting does for you. So I'll leave you to it now. Take care, God bless, Martian Lave and Drasta, agus Bianach Diagod.